Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Alchemize with Alanna show. So, here's a stat for you. Most business owners never hear this, but according to TeamShares and the Exit Planning Institute, data shows that only around 30% of small businesses achieve a successful sale, which then implies that about 70% do not sell. Additional support from similar advisory and brokery industry sources also note that around 80% of businesses listed for sale struggle to find a buyer or never sell. So, this underscores the challenging reality of selling a privately held business without preparation. And today's episode is about why that happens and what nobody warns you about before you try. So, a little bit about my guest. Buying or selling a business isn't just a financial transaction, it's an emotional one. And most people underestimate that until they're already in the middle of it. So, my guest has spent over a decade in financial services and M&A advisory, guiding owners through acquisitions and exits. And I had the opportunity to meet with Paul before this live. And what stood out to me is that a big part of his job isn't just numbers or legal strategy. He sometimes plays the roles of psychologist and emotional shock absorber. He's the person calming people down when they're spiraling, explaining why banks need certain documents, why due diligence feels invasive, and why the stress they're feeling is completely normal, even when they don't want to hear it. So, this process isn't just about numbers. He's bought and sold his own businesses and only takes on deals with high probability of closing and runs everything through a disciplined checklist, including one of my favorite filters. Would I have a beer with this person? This year alone, he's sold 10 businesses. So he knows what he's doing and he's a valuable person to have your back. So today we're talking about what really happens when people leave corporate to buy a business, what it takes to grow one without destroying its value, and why selling a business demands far more of you than you might realize. So, welcome, Paul.
Anna, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you
I
again.
absolutely. I know this one's been a long time coming. We've had to reschedule this a few times, but I often
Yeah.
say all in divine timing. Yeah. So audience, those that are listening live or watching the recording later, ask yourself, am I being pulled towards business ownership because I'm strategically ready or because I'm trying to escape something I don't want to face? So drop your answers in the chat. You don't have to reveal if you are trying to escape or what it is, but okay. So first topic, leaving corporate to buy a business. So this kind of weighs out the fantasy versus the actual math. But when you think about what originally pulled you out of corporate toward buying a business instead of starting one from scratch, what I also want to bring attention to is there seems to be a narrative right now that buying a boring business is the safest path to wealth. So, what are people not being told about that strategy?
What are people not being told about that strategy? That's a really good question. The strategy is great. It actually is sound. You can buy a business and improve it and increases in value. There's a lot of great reasons to go buy a business. But what people aren't understanding is that it is extremely difficult buying a business. Like the whole process can take a very long time, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, or even longer. Once you find a business, it can take you 12 months to find a business that you like. And you spend all this time just to buy the business. And once you buy it, you get the keys. The problem then is like running it, unless you have a lot of experience in HR, technology, finance, and accounting, you're kind of learning on the fly. And it's very easy to make mistakes along the way that can be extremely costly. Being a business owner um, is very, very challenging. And a lot of people start businesses and they sort of learn along the way. But if you just get put into that seat as the owner, you've missed out on the learning opportunities of getting to the place that it's at. Granted, there is obviously advantages of buying a business that's already operating and running, but it is extremely difficult to run a business effectively.
I've worked with a number of business owners. I mean, technically, even though I swim in two lanes, I work with executives and leaders in corporate, and I also work with entrepreneurs, founders, and business owners. But to your point, there is a lot of learning opportunity when you actually grow it yourself. But when you buy one and you've never grown one yourself and you're coming from corporate, sure, you've got some experiences from corporate that could translate over, but there's a lot to actually building, growing, and running a business that you have not been responsible for because somebody else in your corporation has been
Yeah, exactly.
responsible for that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't. How do you handle a situation where you have an employee comes to your office crying, and you've got a deadline to file your taxes, or you're doing something else? How do you handle a situation where employees start yelling at each other, or there's issues there? Or how do you handle a client that's not paying their bills on time or their invoices on time? You haven't had any training on that, and how to delicately navigate those situations is new to a lot of people. And some people get it and they can do it, but other people just they might handle it the wrong way.
Well, and on the surface, those might seem like performance issues, but it's beyond that, right? Like it's because you're responsible for so much more, and it's higher risk because if you do approach it in the wrong way, you don't have an entire HR organization to support you. That person may just leave, and now you've got a void in your business, which could be, detrimental to the continuation of running it.
Meanwhile, you're trying to analyze a marketing program, or you're looking at your ads, you're looking at the analytics of the website, you're trying to grow the business, and you have this other thing that comes, and you don't have the right infrastructure or the processes in place. And a lot of businesses that are sold now, they don't have those processes in place. And because the owner built the business from scratch, and they've just got it all in their head, and they know how to handle the situation because they've got that experience, but a new person doesn't have that experience while juggling multiple hats at the same time.
You're just, even in this last couple of minutes, you're making me realize the value of me as a coach having the experience of being in both worlds, because executive coaches also don't have the experience or knowledge of either running their own business as a entrepreneur per se, but also working with business owners and seeing all the issues that they experience. And then the opposite is true too. The people that advise or coach founders and business owners who have not worked in corporate, especially if they're coming from corporate and buying a business or starting a business, they won't know how to effectively take their strengths and experience, translate it over, while also giving them what else they need on top of that, to fill in the gaps, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I highly recommend anyone who's looking to buy a business or selling a business or just bought a business, go hire a coach, go talk to Alana. It's so important because you can easily let your emotions get in the way of making some sound business decisions. Um, and it's just so important to have that sounding board. And to another point, like when you're the owner of the business, you're at the top. And who do you bounce ideas off? You're not really going to be bouncing ideas off your employees a lot of the times. It's all on you. And there's an expression. And there's a reason why there's expression. It's lonely at the top because you're trying to make all these decisions in a silo, but having a coach supporting you along the way that can confidentially give you some feedback, I think is tremendously valuable.
100%. And I've worked with clients who did make that mistake where they confided in uh, someone that worked for them, and they didn't realize the impact that that would have in terms of that relationship, how they show up, and what they expect from that business owner, and sometimes even entitlement that they might start to have. And lines get crossed, and then it becomes a real issue when the business owner is the business owner and they have to start making some hard decisions. Uh, so yeah, I see this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, business owners won't hesitate to go hire a CPA or an accountant for advice or an
Or a
attorney
lawyer.
for advice,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
But they sort of hesitate and they think about the cost of hiring a coach to hold them accountable, to help them make the right decisions, or hire like even like a growth consultant is very valuable as well. Someone who can show them and also hold them accountable to different milestones on achieving what they want to achieve. When you get too bogged down into the details of the day to day, it's you lose sight of the bigger picture, and that's why having someone holding you accountable is very important, not just an accountant or an attorney.
Much appreciated for that, Paul. And no, the audience, I did not pay him to say that. So
And I
anyway,
got nothing against accountants or attorneys either.
yeah, neither do I. In fact,
Some
I've
of them
worked
are
with
good
them as
people.
clients too. Yeah, 100%. So what's one question every executive who is thinking about doing this, about buying a business, what's something that they should ask themselves, but no one does?
Um, I, it's more so like they like the question is like, am I prepared to put 12-hour, 16-hour days into this business 6, 7 days a week? And they might say yes. But when the reality comes down to it, are they mentally prepared to do that? Are they physically prepared to do that? It's exhausting, like if you're taking a call at 8 p.m. at night and you got a call tomorrow at 5 a.m., it's exhausting, physically exhausting. So you can ask that question, but you have to be real about that. And maybe, they could ask their friends and family, do you think I'm ready for this? Getting support from those people is important as well. And
Yeah.
and sorry if I can add another question is like, do I have the financial capability of hiring a coach or someone to support me through this as well? Right? It's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, because you never know what kind of expenses are going to come up, and also to get that kind of support, because if you don't know what to do, you're going to need to get outside objective help. But yeah,
Yeah.
that you bring attention to the fact that your business might have business hours, but technically your business is never off. And so as an entrepreneur or business founder, technically you do need to be available at all times in case something goes wrong. You need to know that, your family needs to understand that, and it doesn't make you a bad person. It's just that those are just the realities of running a business until you grow enough to have multiple layers of management or support, where you've got someone there that can handle something like that if it comes up.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy to say I'm going to go run a marathon, but really, like when it comes to like that day you're going to run the race, like can you really run a marathon? Have you trained for it? Are you properly ready for that? So, just being real with yourself, because you can look up, and with AI now and the internet, you can research anything, you can learn anything, but are you preparing yourself mentally and physically to go buy a business and grow it? And the first 1 to 2 years or even longer is the toughest, and you just need to be prepared for that and have people
I
to
was,
support you.
yeah, for sure, two, sometimes even three.
Yeah.
And then there's the profitability, which usually doesn't happen until 3 to 5.
Mhm.
If you're, yeah. But speaking of being real, have you ever advised anyone not to buy a business, even though they were really eager and had the money?
Multiple times. Multiple
Okay,
times.
yeah.
Multiple times. Um, Unfortunately, one of the people that I've said, you know what, you shouldn't buy this business. It just the negotiations weren't going well. There's a lot of compromise being done, and I just, it just wasn't set up in a way that was going to be a win for the buyer. And unfortunately, he went and bought a business anyway. It hasn't done so well. Um, but yeah, I would totally advise people not to do it, because if you think about it, like someone buys a business and they really shouldn't have bought that business. Think about all the employees that's involved in that business. There might be 10, 20, 30, 50 employees. And if you got the wrong owner at the helm making bad decisions, the business goes under. You got 30 to 50 people who are relying on their paycheck to make mortgage payments, to feed their kids, have rent payments. So I take that very seriously. If the buyer is not ready to take on that responsibility and support those employees and customers, then I will advise them like, hey, are you sure you really want to do this? Do you have the experience? Are you willing to put in the time and effort to make sure this transaction is successful?
I very much appreciate the fact that you're that honest with them about it. And I also want to address a question that was in the chat, which is, what we think the most important early hire is for someone buying a business for the first time. That there's not a black and white clean answer to that question. How I'm going to answer it is to say, uh, to look at what makes the most sense for your business. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What makes sense for you to be spending your time on? And then where you can delegate and hand some things off, or you can get some support, and that will free you up to do other things that you want to be doing or need to be doing, especially to grow. That's the way I'm going to answer that question. But again, that's something as a coach I can help you really take a broader view or a bird's eye view of your business and help you decide on what that first hire looks like, and even a strategy of who would you hire next after that person, or the hiring strategy overall. I hope that answers that question. And Paul, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
I mean, I would just reiterate having like some sort of coach to hold you accountable and help you think clearly through some of these decisions. And then I would hire like an executive assistant,
Absolutely.
someone who you can delegate those. Because when you first buy a business, you got a task list, a to-do list of like 18 pages long, and you're so excited to run the business, but some of those tasks really should be delegated to someone else.
Absolutely. Okay, so in moving on to the second topic, I also want to ask the audience, if you already own a business, consider this. If someone tried to buy it tomorrow, what would immediately make them nervous? Is it the systems, your people, the financials, or the fact that the business can't run without you? Because I've seen that happen a lot too. Okay, so growing the business and the challenges along the way. So buying the business, like you said, Paul, is the sexy part.
Yeah.
But living with it every day is where we need to get real. So, what's the fastest way that new owners accidentally destroy value in the first 12 to 24 months?
You, I think not having a full understanding of the employee situation and the relationship with their customers. If you don't understand that relationship, or you don't build a strong enough relationship with your employees or your customers, you can easily destroy the value of the company. Customers stop placing orders, your employees leave. And when an employee leaves, you have that institutional knowledge that just walks out the door.
Oh,
It could
yeah.
be as simple as like, hey, what's the password to the website? Oh, Bob knows it. Bob's no longer here. Okay, so now I'm going to spend an hour, 2 hours. It may not seem like much, but it's just a drag on your day, drag on your mental capacity to go call the web hosting company, get the password reset. So,
Documentation. That is one of the
yeah.
biggest things I see when I help business owners. I'm like, where is this documented? Well, it's not. It's
Mm.
in my head. Okay, well, that's not going to help anyone, or it's in their head, like you just said. And that if that person walks out the door, you're kind of screwed. So, it's because like you said, it's the knowledge, it's the experience. They might have relationships with the supplier or the clients. There's so
Mhm.
much. And then, when those changes kind of happen, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you're not taking the time to learn or document, people feel uneasy. And when you hire new people to come in, it'll make the training process and the onboarding process so much easier because you have information properly documented. They can go learn on their own. And then, it doesn't mean that you can just let them flail out there, but in checking in with them, you're going to want to find out what they learned. What did they see? What's missing? How can I help you learn this? What are they putting into practice from what they're reading? Same with customers or clients. What information can you document to make it easier on them to get answers that they need versus having to come to you all the time for things? Because then you end up spending most of your time putting out fires.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the history of those relationships is so important. As a new business buyer, you should be interviewing your employees, you should be interviewing customers, and it's a great opportunity to learn how things may not have been that great, and items that you could improve on, right? And obviously document. You have to
Document,
document
yeah.
things.
Yeah. I had a client that I was coaching. His company acquired another company, and most of the team stayed. But immediately upon engaging with them, they saw how there was nervousness or unease around things. If they couldn't figure out why, once they started to really take the time to develop a relationship with them, they figured out how the previous owner had treated them and either didn't give them the information that they needed, didn't properly handle development conversations. And so that gave them an opportunity to fix those things. And that quickly helped them develop trust, which made those people want to stay even more. Whereas most often when there's a handover, there's a lot of attrition that happens.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah, for sure. You gotta really understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, so how often you know, do owners think that they have a people problem when there's actually maybe a leadership or a decision making problem?
That's a great question. I would say it's always a leadership problem. It's always a leadership problem because the leader's either allowing it to happen, or they're causing it to happen. So it's always a leadership problem. The employees, people don't leave jobs; they leave their boss a lot of the times, right? So if you're not treating
100%.
your employees correctly, they're gonna leave. If you haven't set up the right structure and process in place, they're gonna leave. If you're not respecting them, they're gonna leave. Um, if you're allowing another employee to act a certain way, that's going to have an impact on the rest of the team. So I'd say it's always a leadership problem, which is easy to be fixed. Well, maybe it's not easy to be fixed, but if you identify it as a problem, then you can work on it, and you
I
don't
always
need to
say,
fire people.
yes. Well, I always say I like to live in a world where there's always a solution. And if it's, being that it's usually it's a leadership problem, like you said, even though somebody else, it's their behavior, because the leader is tolerating it. The leader is not
Exactly.
doing anything about it. And what's usually interesting is what I've observed is that when they finally let that person go, the rest of the team, it's like the energy changes, the people can breathe, all of a sudden they start showing up more, they're more engaged, they're more powerful, they're talking more. And the general attitude of it was like, why didn't you do that sooner? And sometimes the owner, if I'm coaching them, they too are like, I probably should have done that sooner.
Yeah, I mean, I got a quick story about that. There was this person who bought a business, and they had one employee who had a massive ego, was generating 60% of the revenue. This was a consulting type business.
That's a tough one. That's a tough, yeah, keep going.
And he had a massive ego, good employee. I mean, he was, really smart, intelligent, just a good person as well, but just a really massive ego. And the business owner came in, or the buyer came in, bought the business, and was like, "No, I'm the boss. You do things the way I tell you to do things, or you're out." And so they butted heads a few times, and then the new business owner fired that employee, thinking, "Oh, I can get someone else very easily and quickly that will cost me less and generate more." And unfortunately couldn't find anyone, and that business suffered a good 40 to 60% revenue drop, which spiraled into eventually bankruptcy. The business went bankrupt
Oh God, yeah. See,
from
it's
one
just
bad
ego,
decision.
right? It's just ego against ego.
Mm.
Whereas if that leader, and should knowing the numbers, knowing that this person is bringing in 60% of the revenue, like,
Mm.
hold on a second, like, okay, this person does have a big ego. I need to set them straight, and they're highly valuable to my business. So what's the best way to approach this? Again, I'm biased, but this is one of the reasons why an objective person like a coach or consultant or advisor can come in and help you see it from different points of view and give you language or in a way to actually engage in that hard conversation. What were you going to say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I agree.
Were you going to say something else?
Oh, no, I wasn't going to say anything. No, I agree with you. I
Okay.
agree with you
Okay.
100%.
So, what I'm also seeing just in general in the business world is a lot of pressure right now to scale really fast. So when does growth actually hurt exit value?
Uh, well, to answer that question, you first have to understand business valuation. And I won't go into the boring details of business valuation, but essentially, someone's going to value the business on the future potential of the cash flows. For most businesses are valued based on the cash flow potential and a risk adjusted cash flow potential. So if you are thinking grow, 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 you're investing in developing new marketing strategies, you're buying new software, and your expenses just balloon, and your net income goes down, your cash flow goes down. Well, from a cash flow perspective, that doesn't look good. The future may look really great, but it's going to really hurt the valuation now until you can actually prove those investments have actually paid off. So being too aggressive with your growth plans and investing too much, it hurts the valuation now. It could be amazing later on. You just have to be careful when you plan to sell.
Yeah, I've seen this show up, especially when in the profit margin and where the business owner will forego a paycheck and
Yeah.
consistently invest money back into the business, because it's what they feel they have to do. But yet, like to your point, if they want to exit, and one person I worked with did, and that was something that was going to be really important for them to fix.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the EBITDA.
Yep. Okay, so one more question on this topic. So in today's economic climate, having to do with labor shortages, inflation, lots of uncertainty in our world right now. What separates businesses that become sellable assets from those that become golden handcuffs?
That's a big question. So
Okay, so
Um, every industry is different. So last year, when there was all this talk about tariffs, anything that was importing, suffered, a massive valuation declines and loss of interest from buyers. And so the sort of larger global economics really can play an impact on an industry or sector perspective. But at the end of the day, if you've set up a business that is cash flowing, you've got systems in place, you're not integral to the business. If you can step away from the business and take a vacation for 3 weeks and turn off your phone, then you've got a good business that can be sold. Because buyers, if you're selling a business for 2 million, 3 million, $5 million, the people who have that kind of money and capital, they don't want to buy a job. You may be fine working in a job and making $3 million a year, but most of the business buyers don't want a job. They just want the cash flow. So setting the business up correctly, regardless of the industry, is really important. And if something comes up, you've got a plan to address it.
that's a subtle but powerful distinction in that in buying a business, it's like, you're doing it because once you purchase it, you want to get your hands dirty and get extremely involved yourself, or to your point, are you buying it because it's just going to be another great cash flow asset for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I want to pause here for a moment because a lot of what we're talking about is not theoretical. And I see it play out in real time with clients, especially owners who own a business currently and they feel stuck um, because of what they're tolerating and some of the things that we're talking about. Because I had a client come to me one time because she wanted help selling her company. And on the surface, it looked like a simple strategy conversation. But within one session, what came out was that most nights she was coming back home asking herself, why am I even doing this? And she was really deep in the weeds in her business and she was avoiding decisions. So she knew that she needed more direct communication. She was letting people get away with things that were not okay for her or the business, and she was carrying the weight of everyone else's livelihood that was really weighing on her. And she ultimately said to me, I don't even need this company anymore. But at some point for her, it was do or die. And she said, I don't know which way to go. And that was the moment that she could have either spiraled or delay for another year. But what we uncovered wasn't a lack of capability, it was martyrdom. And I say that with compassion. She had lost her own why. It wasn't gone, it was just buried. And it was because of what she was tolerating. So, one of the most simplest and powerful shifts we made was things are only as big of a deal as I make it or I make them. So suddenly she could see where she needed to be more assertive, who needed to be addressed, and what decisions she was avoiding. And so this is why I'm offering a resolve session. It's not long term coaching, it's a focused, high stakes conversation to help you see clearly, cut through emotional fog, and decide what actually needs to happen next. So whether you're preparing to sell, step back, or walk away, if you're lying awake at night and asking yourself why you're doing this, that's not a business problem, it's a signal. So again, please get in touch with me about a resolve session, and Jesse's going to share that link in the chat. Okay, so audience, before we go into the next and last topic, if you say you're not ready to sell yet, is that because the timing isn't right or because the business isn't actually sellable in its current form? So, Paul, how much of a bad exit is really about market timing versus the owner's attachment and identity?
Oh, they're both bad. um, I would say most of the time it's the owner's attachment to the business. They're just not emotionally ready to sell the business. Either they want too high of a purchase price, or they haven't done the work to make the business sellable. Um, Market timing, you know, when interest rates were shooting up in 2023, people were still buying businesses. When loans were at 10, 11, 12%, people were still buying businesses. So I would say it's more about the owner's attachment to the business than market timing.
Emotional attachment has a lot to do with many things and becomes an unnecessary obstacle. I see it all the time. So, kind of in a similar vein, what's the most common lie that owners tell themselves about what their business is worth?
They they don't know how to value a business, and they think because they've got 10 years of history or 20 years of history or 30 years of history that is going to increase the purchase price. It doesn't directly, maybe indirectly, it makes it a little bit more attractive to people. But to be very candid with you, if you've got a business and you're only generating $1 million of revenue after 20 years, then that's going to pose some questions for buyers as well. So um, not really understanding how businesses are valued, that's the big problem for business owners.
Yeah, that seems like just a great thing to spend time educating yourself on for sure. Well, kind of on
Yeah.
the flip side too, if someone says, "Oh, I'll just hold it for another year," like what are the real risks they're taking financially and personally?
Yeah, I mean, what happens if an employee hurts themselves at work or quits and sues you no matter if it's like a legitimate claim or not? What happens if they threaten like $1 million lawsuit? Those are the risks you're going to have. What happens if the tariff situation comes back and you lose customers and revenue? There's a lot of risk every single day. There's a risk of owning a business, so holding on to it uh, is very risky for sure.
I knew someone in construction who uh, they weren't working with a coach and they were working on a project and They knew the owner of the land personally, and both assumed the other was going to get an insurance liability policy. And somebody walked onto the property, fell in a hole, and sued. And
Yeah.
that just put them right out of business. And so it's those kinds of things by having, someone objective can help you see things that you can't see and ask you questions that you're not asking yourself, and be fully objective. So what's also when, in terms of when people try to approach this transaction in a do-it-yourself way, what's the biggest mistake that they make without having experienced guidance like yourself?
You know, I've sold a business on my own. I've sold my own business. I've also used a broker to sell my own business. Unless you have the experience and that emotional tolerance of the frustrations of running the process, it is extremely difficult to sell a business on your own. It's just awkward. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars and leave it on the table. You're going to get frustrated, and it's going to be very expensive to do it on your own. A good advisor is going to help you through the negotiation. It's going to help you protect your sensitive information without sharing it to the wrong person. It's going to help you stop wasting time. You could be dealing with the wrong buyer from the beginning, and then you go 4 months, 5 months down the path, and the buyer's like, you know what, I don't want to buy the business anymore. Well, there goes 5, 6 months of your life. Plus, you've also shared all the secrets of the business. So selling a business on your own is doable, but it's extremely difficult if you've never done it before. And I tell you, AI is not going to help you through that process. It's all about experience.
I very much appreciate that because so much reliance is happening right now on AI for advice and information, and it's not always accurate, or best for the person that's asking the question. And so, when you work with people through this process, like what do you see change in them after they sell that nobody talks about?
They get bored. They get bored very easily. They've had, I mean, there's the positives and negatives. So the positive is like, even for myself, when I sold one of my businesses, that day I remember just sitting back and relaxing. It's like, I don't have to worry about this anymore. I had a retail store, and I've been broken into. The alarm would go off at 4 a.m. in the morning. I didn't have to worry about that anymore. So it's a huge positive. But I've also spoken to business owners who've sold, and they keep harassing the buyer. Hey, do you need any help with this? And they get involved and like, you shouldn't be doing things this way, because they're bored. They don't, they used to be, that's their identity a lot of the time. And they need to be able to separate that I'm a business owner identity with now I'm doing something else identity. So those are the pros and cons of selling a business.
Well, what I love about that too is, what it's, I'm assuming that in this process, they're so caught up in the moment of being in the process of it that they're not thinking about the future of who they want to become, how they want to spend their time, what do they want to create going forward. Even if they're looking to retire, we all need purpose. And I've seen how that affects people even in retirement, because they don't really have purpose in life. And it, or they're coming from, I just want to get out. I'm tired. So it's coming from, they're trying to get away from something versus walking towards something, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, a conversation I had with a seller one time just you reminded me. It's like I said, "What are you gonna do when you retire? You're gonna have this big check, and what are you gonna do?" It's like, Paul, I'm gonna go sailing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's one day. You're pretty young, so what are you gonna do day two? It's like, I guess I'll spend time with family, and well, yeah, I pushed him a little bit, like start developing some longer term plans and some hobbies and things you can do because he was young. He was like 45 or so. Um, yeah, for sure. You need to have that, and selling a business is a second job. Even when you have an advisor helping you through the process, You're out there collecting documents, looking at legal documents, LOIs, and purchase agreements, and all these documents that take a lot of time. It's a second job, and so you don't have a lot of time to think about what you're going to do after the close.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I could go on that topic all day long because I've seen it, how it plays out in different ways. But to wrap up this last topic from a buyer's point of view, what should the buyer be looking at in terms of what makes that, like, a particular company a good investment?
Good question. They need to be thinking about how they can add value. How can their previous experience, work, life experiences bring value to this business? Not, oh, I can learn this and I can figure this out. It's like, oh no, I've worked in a business before where we implemented this and it worked out really nicely. So they need to be thinking about how they're going to buy a business that they can increase the value and they're going to enjoy it as well. Like that's the other thing. Is like ask yourself if the phone wakes you up at 4 a.m. in the morning because of some situation, is that okay? Are you going to enjoy that? Are you going to enjoy driving to work or going to this new place of business for at least 1 year? Because it takes a long time to sell a business. If you wanted to sell your Apple stock or Microsoft stock, you can do it in seconds, but selling a business takes a long time. So you have to be asking yourself, will I enjoy this, every single day?
It's funny about that. I had an Uber driver one time that I found out in just talking with him that he owned two other businesses, but they were pretty much running themselves. And he was so relaxed, you would never know that he was a business owner running two other businesses. And I thought, why are you driving for Uber if you don't necessarily need the money? And he said, because I'm bored and I love talking to people. And I thought, well, he said, and my wife was like, why don't you go drive for Uber? And so,
Yeah.
so he just
There's an executive for a very, very, very large firm. I forget the name of the firm, but he actually drives Uber just as a way to track his customer service because he gets rated every trip he does, and so he wants to make sure he's delivering a great customer experience with his other business as well. So he does it like very part time, and that's in that.
I love, yeah, so did this gentleman. I love it. Okay. I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Great.
There are, let's see, one, two, three. I have five of them. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
Okay, one
Yes.
word or phrase as much as possible.
Okay.
Okay, best reason to sell a business.
You're bored.
Worst reason to sell a business.
There's problems in the business.
Most overrated exit metric.
The number of years the business has been established.
Ooh, I want to ask more questions about that one, but so one red flag buyers see instantly.
Customer concentration. If that one customer goes, the business suffers.
Absolutely. And lastly, one thing owners should stop doing today if they want to sell in the future.
Being in the business, you need to get out of the business. Think strategically, get out of the business, take a vacation, stop doing the day to day.
And I love that one because absolutely that's where coaches come in, or
You're
someone
either
like
selling a
myself.
job or selling a company. Which one
Right.
is
It's
it?
like there is a distinction between working in the business and on the business. So
Yeah, totally.
absolutely.
100%.
Okay, audience, if this episode stirred something for you, whether you're in corporate running a business already or quietly thinking about exiting, this is your reminder. These decisions shape your life, not just your balance sheet. So if you're navigating growth right now, transition, or increased complexity, and want a grounded conversation about what's really shaping your decisions, one conversation can change a lot. Again, book a resolve session with me. Also, in every session I do, clients ask for help either on a difficult decision or a hard conversation, and some conversations can change everything if we're brave enough to have them. So that's why I also created the Conversation Prep Toolkit, which is complimentary if you sign up for my newsletter. and it helps you step into those moments with more intention, less worry or hesitation, and communicate in a way that actually lands. So please go ahead and sign up for my newsletter. And be sure to subscribe to the show. Leave a comment if you're watching the recording later on as well. Share with us what landed for you, and also share this episode with somebody else that might need to hear it. So thank you again for joining us for Alchemize with Alanna, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Alana.
Thanks.